Hi there, I'm Eitan, and welcome back to the Wix Wiz. And wait, what's that behind me? It is not Wix, it is Webflow. And that is because today I will be doing a walkthrough and using Webflow pretty much for the first time, and just sharing my thoughts and experience and how it compares to the Wix platform across some key criteria, such as ease of use, design, custom code, SEO, performance, etc. So if you want to learn all about that and more, let's get started. Okay, so I have signed into Webflow, and this is the first onboarding experience that I'm going through. And I could already see in the background that I'm kind of already in some kind of editor. And this question actually reminds me of the onboarding process for Wix as well, or at least the new onboarding process. And I'm kind of curious what kind of different offerings and features I would get depending on my answer here. If I'm just designing for myself or I'm designing for clients. I'm assuming if it's anything like the Wix experience, then possibly they're assuming that somebody designing for themselves has somewhat less experience or knowledge designing websites, whereas an agency might have a little more. Also, you might get some more tools for building websites for others and managing multiple websites as opposed to just building one single website for yourself. I'm going to select all the options just because I don't know what selecting only one or the other will kind of limit me to. So let's go ahead and continue with that. What describes how you work with clients, let's say in an agency. It could also just be that this is like a survey. They want to gain some, they want to gain some insights for their own company, and this is like a good place for them to do it. What describes your workplace? Let's say small business, 6 to 10. What type of site are you looking to build today? I'm just going to go with other because I don't want them to put anything kind of into the website without my knowledge. Like if I choose e-commerce, maybe that will like install some kind of app, but I want to have full control over the experience so I can really see what the flow is like for somebody who's starting from zero. So I'm going to go ahead and click continue. Are you interested in hiring someone to help build your website today? I am not. I want to learn Webflow and finish. Uh-oh. I hope I hope I didn't accidentally subscribe to their emails because that would be very annoying. But worst case, I'll unsubscribe and put them in spam. Okay, so it seems like everything is loading up and we're ready to get started with Webflow. Okay, so since this is really pretty much my first time on Webflow, I'm going to go through their little tutorial that they have set up here. So the first thing that we're going to do is to build a simple layout. Get started with Webflow. Awesome, so let's go ahead and get started. And so very similar to the Wix experience, you add elements using a plus button that's on the upper left side of the screen. So that's actually quite similar. And I see here that I have kind of several different elements that I can add in here. There's also the option to tab here between, I'm going to close this for now. No, I do want to stay in the tutorial. Okay, so let's follow the tutorial and then I'll do some freestyle afterwards. So I can go ahead and I can drag stuff onto the screen. And I already see here that based on that very simple experience, I don't seem to have the capability that I would have within Wix, which is to just drag something in and drop it anywhere on the screen. Okay, so it's a slightly different design experience. It kind of reminds me a little more of WordPress, kind of Squarespace experience. But again, I don't want to judge completely at this point, but that was just my initial impression. Okay, so I have the container here, and here I'm prompted now to give the container a height. So let's go ahead and do that. And I see it takes me here to the side panel. So this is kind of reminiscent of more like the new studio experience. Within the classic Wix editor, we still have the option to give things, height, width, X, Y properties using the tools, but it's kind of less evident. And in Wix, you're really encouraged to drag and drop and then kind of change the size using the handles that you'd have at the sides of the element. Whereas here, they're taking me directly to this side panel, and I can set, let's say, min height to 400. So let me try doing that. Awesome. So then you can see that the container here kind of grew to a height of 400. And now they're encouraging me to add some more elements. So let's go ahead and do that and try dragging a heading into the container. So I'm going to go ahead and drag that in. Awesome. And again, my heading, they automatically just like appended it to the top of the container, which is very different than the Wix experience, where as soon as you drag something in, it just pretty much plops onto wherever you dragged it. And now so they're asking me to try adding a button. So let me try adding a button. And I'll just drag that into the same container. And again, it kind of just snaps up here right to where the heading is. So it's just like right under it. And okay, so elements stack vertically by default. To change this, you can adjust the container's display rules. The first step is to select the container. I'm going to go ahead and select that. And I can change this to Flexbox. Let me try that. I'm going to click right over here, and that changes it to Flexbox. I mean, Flexbox could be column and could be row. I mean, if we're talking pure CSS, so I guess it says row. Flexbox container, set the flexbox, all child and align to taking up the full container height. Since this looks weird, let's place the button below the heading and center them. To do this, we need to change to vertical. So it's okay, very like Flexbox and CSS. So we have the option for horizontal, which is what we're currently on, or that would be called row, and we have vertical, which would be column. And the difference between this and what my container was doing before is you could see now that the button is stretched to the full length of the container. And now we can center the content, so center the alignment over here. So it is a lot more aligned with probably design principles that you would be following if you were developing your website from scratch. So if you were developing your website with like HTML, CSS, JavaScript, then you usually would use logic that's more similar to this experience than the Wix drag and drop logic. Like you don't have that freedom, and it's also usually you just usually don't want to just plop things around on your website. Things have a structure and a relationship and follow design principles. So I'm not saying like one's good and one's bad, but I do think that what appeals to a lot of people initially jumping into Wix is this freedom where they can just drag something on the screen and it's there, and they can adjust the sizes using these very simple handlebars, and they don't have to deal with this kind of side panel that you have over here, which could be a little confusing or complex to people with like zero experience. So I do see the advantage that Wix might have here in kind of the initial like first out of the box experience, but I'm not saying that to like down this experience. I think that it's just as legitimate as kind of a freestyle drag and drop. And in the end of the day, you could probably achieve almost the same exact design with both. So it's not that it's limited in terms of design, it's just kind of a different approach for how you place the things on your canvas. Okay, let's continue with the tutorial. So justify elements. Let's see. So I can also, okay, so in justify would be to the height. So I'm just going to go over here and click justify. And now my heading is kind of in the center, and it's already starting to look pretty good, if I may say so myself. And next up, applying styles and classes. So use classes to save styling information that applies to many elements as you want. Let's apply some styles, then use classes to save and update sets of styles across your project. Okay, that's pretty cool. Again, this is very much how regular CSS would work. You would define certain classes and you can apply them to different elements. With Wix, you can save designs, but I'm wondering here if maybe these classes are more easily applicable to multiple different kinds of elements, whereas the Wix, pre-saved designs, I don't think that they are as easily applicable across different types of elements. Like if you have a design for drop down, that can't really be applied to a box, let's say, because they have very, very different properties. Whereas if you're using pure CSS, then technically you can apply that same class to both elements, even though they're completely different. So I'm wondering here if that's the approach Webflow is going to take. So let me go ahead and click continue over here. So I'm prompted here to select the heading to style it and adjust the styles in the style panel. For now, set the size to 80 pixels. Okay, let me do that. and learn about classes. Let's find and select style buttons below. Okay, let's see. Select this button to make style adjustments. Classes are defined in the selector field. Classes are used on the web to style elements. Okay, I know how classes work, so I don't really need to read this. Style adjustments made to the primary button will affect every button with the same class. So really very much how CSS classes work, and I kind of like this approach. It's very intuitive to somebody who's coming from a web development background, and it would also easily be a good starting point for somebody who starts in Webflow and then decides to go into web development. Web development like from scratch. It basically means you're using the same sets of principles to do your design. So it's not like an alien, completely independent experience, more like you have with the Wix Classic editor. So I'm kind of liking this approach for now. Style adjustments made the primary button. Okay, awesome. So let's go ahead and click next. Adjust the space inside the button. Change the left padding from 20 pixels to 36 pixels by clicking the highlighted area. So let me go ahead and I'm going to go over here. And they wanted me to change the padding here to 36 pixels. Awesome. A little uneven, but oh, okay, change the right one as well. That's what they want me to do now. So let me go click over here and 36. I'm sorry if my head is blocking some of this stuff, but you get the idea. Okay, edit class styles. When you edit element styles, those changes apply to every element with the same class. So if you change the padding on this button, any elements with the primary button class will update. Okay, so now you can see like all the buttons have updated with the same styling because they all have this same primary button style selector. Okay, so let me go ahead here and click next. Okay, scroll up. Select your button to add a class. So I'm going to go ahead and click my button that I already added. And then here I can go ahead and add a selector. So if I go ahead, I'm guessing click here and existing classes. I'm wondering why I don't see that primary button class that I saw before. Oh, I need to start typing. Oh, there it is. That's weird. Why didn't I see it here on this list though? I don't know. Maybe there's too many. Primary button. And choose it from the drop-down. Awesome. And now my button here is styled just like the other primary buttons. I have to say, I like it. Very intuitive. Yeah, awesome. Okay, using classes, you've instantly applied classes work faster and avoid. Awesome. Next up, responsive style adjustments. Okay, so this is a big topic for Wix now, especially as they meander from editor X to studio versus classic versus everything. So the whole topic of responsive design is very interesting. And I actually do think that a lot of the responsive design revolution that Wix is going through at the moment is a reaction to Webflow. I actually think that. I think that if we look at the timeline, we can see that the beginning of editor X probably coincides closely to Webflow, and I think possibly also some other responsive editors, but I think it was very reactionary to new editors and new platforms that were coming out that had a much better responsive design experience. So let's see what the Webflow one is really like. So responsive style adjustments, use breakpoints to customize your design for different screen sizes. Okay, so very much like Editor X or Studio. Let's go ahead and click continue here. And those breakpoints are up here on top, also very much like Studio. So select my heading and then adjust the color of your heading. So let's say color block and set the color to okay, I don't know why they want me to change it specifically to that color, but let's try 1B522. Okay, yellow to match the button, I guess. And now view the tablet breakpoint up here. So let's see how this change affects other breakpoints. So if I select here the tablet breakpoint, so style change made on the base breakpoint automatically apply to all the screen sizes. Style applied to smaller screens do not affect larger screen sizes. So exactly like Editor X or Studio, uh, the highest breakpoint or breakpoints affect breakpoints below them, but not above them. Okay, so that's pretty much the same. Let's go ahead and click Next. So the heading seems a bit large. Set the size property to 55 pixels so that the heading fits tablet breakpoints nightly. Okay, so I'm going to change this to 55. And now they're telling me to check the mobile breakpoint. And styles cascade down. When you make a style change in the tablet breakpoint, okay, that's what they just said before. Uh, and let's check the desktop breakpoint now they want me to check out here. And changes cascade up and down from desktop. Did you notice that the heading style on the larger desktop breakpoint weren't affected? Okay, I did notice, thank you. That's because styles cascade up and down from the desktop breakpoint. Everything right of the desktop cascades down, and everything left of the desktop cascades up. One second, let me see if I can figure out what that means. Styles cascade up and down from the desktop. Everything right of the desktop cascades down. Everything left of the desktop cascades up. What is left of the desktop? If you understood what that means, please leave it in the comments below. I'm feeling a little stupid right now because I don't know what they're talking about left of the desktop. Maybe I'm just blanking. The pressure of the recording is shorting out my mind. But okay, maybe I'll learn that later on. One thing that I do want to mention here with regard to the breakpoints. So within Wix, you have the option, at least within Studio, you have the option to navigate between different breakpoints, but you also have these like handlebars here on the side that would allow you to also see different screen sizes within a specific breakpoint. So not only breakpoints, but also just really like a full flex adjustment of the canvas that I do like a lot. And I think really lets you kind of like just double check that it's going to look good on all those intermediary sizes and not just on a specific breakpoint. But that also might be linked to the flexibility that the Wix editor gives. So because it gives so much flexibility, you really need to double check more. Whereas an editor with less flexibility like this one, it might not make as big of a difference. I'm not sure, but that is a feature that I do like in Wix, and I don't see it here at the moment. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist. I'm just saying that it's definitely not as obvious and not as easy to use as the Studio one from that perspective. So just that's kind of a note. Okay, let's head to the next stage. Preview site. So this is something that's really important for me to understand because I think that one of the Wix's current weaknesses is their preview and testing options for the website. And also some things that have to do with the publishing flow. I know that it's something that the Wix team is always working on and trying to improve, but that is something that I'm really interested in seeing how other platforms do. So let's go ahead and see what this preview site looks like. So I'm going to click the play icon to preview between, preview and design mode. So I'm going to click this toggle preview button right up here. And awesome, so it kind of gets rid of all the editor things on the side. And I can kind of navigate between different breakpoints and see what it looks like. There we go. So in preview mode, you do have the handle here on the side. This is kind of what I was talking about. And you can, okay, interesting. So in Webflow, it's only in preview mode. In Wix, you could also have that like within the editor itself. So that's pretty cool. And I also, one thing that I noticed here is just the speed at which it went into preview mode is a crazy comparison. I mean, with Wix, you click preview mode, you go make yourself a cup of coffee, you come back, and then like maybe you're in preview mode if your website's like a new website like this one. But here it was really like instantaneous, the flip to preview mode, and I was like, whoa, Okay, that's pretty awesome. Again, maybe if like the site was more complex, it might take a little longer, but I think that even like if I would compare a Wix website of this size, just like a one pager, it would still take longer to go into preview mode. So that's very interesting to see. Okay, publishing the site. So let's go ahead and finish up here. So I'm gonna finish. Okay, it didn't actually require me to publish, so we're gonna have to check that later on. And great, so I'm done with this tutorial and I can go ahead and start my first project. Okay, so here I am in my first real project where I have full reins and nobody's telling me what to do. And I'm going to start here with a blank site, just kind of like blank canvas. Aton's fabulous site. I like it. Let's take the name and create site. Awesome. I'm not sure why it like shows you the editor and then it like needs to redirect you back to the edit. I'm not sure like what that flow is there, but awesome. Here we are, and I have everything at my disposal. So let me play around and let's first see what kind of elements we have that we can add to our website. So I'm going to go over here to the Add Element tab, which I learned about in the tutorial. And I see here that we have sections, containers. Okay, so different kind of layouts. Let me see here what layouts does. Okay, so these are like just pre-made layouts. Wix typically will give you a few more than these, but I don't use them anyways. So let's just take a look here at elements. Okay, so section, and interesting. So this caught my eye here, div block, and that's because I this kind of goes with continued with that theme of Webflow kind of matching the typical web development experience more closely. So a div is like a very well-known HTML element. So like if you're coming from the web development world, like that rings a bell. And if you're going from this to web development, then it'll also kind of play back and forth like that. So I think that that's it's I don't think it's a coincidence, these choices of words and experience. Like I think it has to do with I'm getting a vibe of like the philosophy behind Webflow, which I'm kind of liking. So let's just see if what will happen if I just grab a div block and I just put it randomly here. Okay, so I'm going to close this thing for now. I already did the tutorial, so I feel like I know what I'm doing, even though I probably don't. Okay, so awesome. So as soon as I put this here, so here on this on the left, I see this navigator, which I guess is like parallel to what layout would be in Wix. And this is also something which this looks a little similar to the experience in, let's say, Studio, whereas in the classic Wix website, the layout is kind of hidden away. So like you don't really know about it unless you really look for it. And yeah, it just has to do with how much they want you exposed to that structure of the website, I guess. I'm not sure what the philosophy is exactly, but just something to note. Anyway, so I see this div block and I can go and kind of select between them like that. I can also select, can I select the div block body, div block? Oh, this is the div block up here. Okay, I thought this was the div block over here. Interesting. I think that, yeah, like just based on that very preliminary experience, I feel like in Wix I kind of know better what's selected and what's not, just that off the bat. Like I don't know, yeah, I didn't even realize that this was the body, this was the div block up here. But again, that has to do with like the drag and drop versus like putting it in like a very templatey way as soon as you put it on the screen and like just like snapping it up to the top. Cool. So let me play around here a bit with what we can edit in this div block. Um, awesome. So this button over here is already catching my eye and I'm like really curious to press it, but I don't want to do, it looks complex. So I don't want to try that off the bat. So let me try creating a new class. How would I do that? I'm curious. I want to try doing that. New class, type to create a new class. So let me call this the best class. And I'm going to give this, let's say, I don't know how you'll see best here because it's kind of on the side. I wish I could maybe expand this panel. Let's give it like a padding of like, I don't know, 10. Awesome. And I'm curious if there's a way to, yeah, so like in Wix, like I would have the option to kind of apply this same padding all around. And this is Wix Studio I'm talking about, of course. Let me see. Hmm. Yeah, for here, like I see that I have to kind of like apply each one, unless there's a shortcut that I just don't know about. But okay, cool. I applied my padding and size. Yeah, let's do that. How would I get like, oh here, color. So let me try giving this like a fill color. Let's say blue. Awesome. At least I can see where my div is. It's up here, by the way. I'm sorry, you can't see it while I'm in the side panel. Let's give it a border radius. I like border radius. All corners, let's give it like a 15 border radius. And, ooh, let's give it a shadow. Let's give it a shadow. Box shadow. Let's see, outside. Color. Let's go black like that. Nice. Awesome. So what I really wanted to kind of do here is see now if I apply this same class to, let's say, a button. Okay, so it's like completely different. Like a div is like parallel to, let's say, a box in Wix, whereas a button is like a completely different element. And I'm curious to see how those classes play across elements, and if my assumption from earlier is true or not. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to add a new element, and I'm going to add in a button. And this button is now like in the div, I think. Yeah. Ooh, how do I get it out of there? Okay. So I moved it to the body, as you can see over here, and then it's kind of like on top of the div. And if I move it under, then it kind of moves under like that. So I think that's a little different, if I recall correctly, than the experience in Wix, where the placement inside of the tree doesn't have a direct effect on the hierarchy, or at least the visual placement of the elements within the editor. It does have to do with, I think, like the Z index, if I'm not mistaken. But then again, this is all from memory, and like when I'm not actually in the editor, you tend to forget things. So don't take my word 100% for it, but I felt there that there was something like slightly different intuitively. Just something overall that I'm noticing here, like the speed is a huge difference. I mean, there's just this editor is really just working very seamlessly and everything is happening instantaneously. Whereas in any of the Wix editors, you always feel like this slight lag whenever you do something. Like, obviously, it's not like to move an element around is pretty quick, but I don't know, you just always feel like it's like making an effort to do what you want. Whereas here, I don't feel like that's happening at all. So that's also something important to note. Okay, so let me just try and do what I was going to do, which is to apply my class here. So like, oh here, the best class, I see it over here. So I'm going to apply that to my button, and yeah, and it applied just like I would expect a CSS class to apply. So 2 thumbs up on that for me for Webflow. I really like that. Um, let's just take a peek here at like some of the other things that we might be able to do here. Box shadow, 3D, 2D, and 3D transformations. Let's see what that is. Move, rotate, skew. Ooh, let's try rotating this. Ooh. Oh, you can't see what I'm doing. Sorry. Take a look now. When I move the rotation, it like, wow. Okay, that's like CSS. Awesome, awesome, awesome. That's pretty cool. I don't think Wix can do that. Then again, like Studio always is having like new features, so it could be I say it doesn't exist today, tomorrow it'll exist, but this is definitely feeling very novel to me, from like a platform perspective. Transitions, awesome. And I'm curious, like, okay, so if I go now into preview, yeah, so this isn't like an animation, it's just like a a CSS property. Um, and let me see here. Cursor. Oh, wow. this is really cool. So Wix does allow you to put a custom cursor, but it doesn't let you control, it doesn't give you all these options and let you control what the cursor would be very much. So this is like all CSS stuff. Like in CSS, you can set, the cursor to be a pointer or to be like the grab or whatever. So like it's basically giving you like full access to CSS. And let's see custom properties. Yeah, so these are all like different CSS properties. And then you can just add in like a CSS value over here. I'm sorry that my head is kind of blocking. And I'm forcing you to look in my direction, but that's how they design this editor. Um, awesome. Like so far, I have to say that in terms of design capability, intuition, if I have to like pick one or the other, I'm leaning towards Webflow on this one. So yeah, I'm really liking the experience, and as like a first-time user with some background in web development and using other platforms and stuff, I find it super intuitive and super capable. The last thing I want to try out here in terms of design is to check out this create component, because I'm just super curious what this will do. So let me go ahead and click that. And then I have this thing here that popped up on the left. So I'm going to give this component a name. Let's call it awesome thing. And I'm going to go ahead and click create. And okay, so this thing popped up over here on the right. Experience the power of components. Components let you reuse design across your site. Changes in the main component will affect all instances. To customize an instance, add properties to your component. Interesting. So I don't want to dive too deep in this, but basically what I understand here is that whereas CSS will allow you to apply design principles to possibly even multiple elements, a component here in Webflow, based on this like very initial interaction, is an element with possibly shared functionality, design, um, that you want to reuse throughout your site. So like a button that you're going to be using throughout your site and stuff like that. So I think Wix has some similar things. I'm not sure to what extent this component. Um, I think that like, you can give it attributes beyond just design that it will preserve throughout the component. So I think that that is something powerful. And I feel like this is something with a lot of potential. I don't want to dive in too deep because this is really just a preliminary experience here on Webflow, but I think that I've kind of opened up a Pandora's box, which could be really awesome. So I would definitely want to learn more about that if I was looking into Webflow. And yeah, so that is kind of a peek into what kind of elements we can add in. There's one more element that I want to try playing around with because I think it's a super important element, and that is a list or a repeater element. I think that the way that a platform handles those kinds of elements really reflects a lot about the platform and its capabilities. So let me go ahead and add that in here. So I'm going to add in. So I see here, so I see here a list, and I also see here this option for collection lists. Let me just highlight those two. So I see here plain list over here, and I see collection list over here. Okay, that's right. This right over here. So let me go ahead and add in first this like just regular list. And okay, so it just seems to be a list. And now I want to see if I can put a list in this list, because that's what I'm super curious about. So let's see if I take another list from over here and I try to put it inside the list. And there we have a list within a list. So this is a huge pain point for Wix, I think. The lack of ability to put repeaters within repeaters. Whereas here in Webflow, I definitely could do it just from a design standpoint. The real test here is if it can be done from a data standpoint. So I'm trying to see here, let's say, if I wanted to link this up to data, how I would do that. And I'm trying to take a look here. Interactions. So I don't see anything over there. Style. Okay, so we're going to have to do that probably in the next chapter, learn a little bit more about how we connect different elements to data. And that's really the next leap that I want to take. I think that there's probably a lot more that I can explore here in terms of the Webflow design capabilities, but I think that just these few minutes of playing around has definitely given a lot of insight into how it compares to Wix and which one possibly has the upper hand here. I don't want to I don't want to diss Wix too much, but I'm kind of liking the Webflow experience. Um, and now I really want to explore some of the other capabilities because I think that while the ease of design is what might initially bring people to Wix, I think some of their other offerings, such as business solutions and ability to connect to data, CMS, custom code, are also huge selling points for why people stay on Wix for the long run. So I'm kind of interested in taking a peek at those as well, and possibly we can explore the design later on in future tutorials. Okay, so let's hop into the topic of custom code. And I'll admit that I just took a few minutes to do some preliminary research and understand how custom code works in Webflow because it's not something that I would be able to intuitively find, I think, just by playing around here in the editor. And I have to say that I'm a little disappointed. Like, I mean, I knew that it wasn't going to be as good as Wix, but basically, let me show you. So if we try to add custom code to a page, first of all, let's try going over here. And I'm going to go here to the settings of this home page. And if I scroll here all the way down, then you'll see on the bottom here, there's this custom code section. So first of all, custom code, as we saw kind of before as well, it's going to require a hosting plan. That means before you can use custom code here at all, you're going to need to pay some money. Which is very different than the Wix experience where you have full access to Velo, REST APIs, everything that you want, out of the box, free website, and you can play around and experiment. So that is an initial bummer. Let's say if the capabilities matched, then it could somehow be justified, but unfortunately they don't at all. So since I don't really feel like upgrading Webflow just to show you what custom code looks like, I did find some examples and some instructions regarding custom code that I think will give us a pretty good idea of what is possible and what's not, even without kind of adding it to the website ourselves. So if I try here, for example, to click over here, it will take me to the dashboard, and I'll be able to possibly add in custom code just to give you like a peek at what these plans would look like. So basic is $14 a month. CMS, so that doesn't even include CMS. CMS is $23 a month. So I'm already seeing that the pricing seems to be a little pricier than Wix. I actually didn't really plan on talking about pricing at all. But since this kind of forced me into this place, then I took a peek, and I just because pricing is such a volatile thing and like it can change, and Wix goes up and this goes down and there's different prices and different features, and it's very hard to compare in terms of the pricing, but it does intuitively seem like a little pricey considering like the fact that there's 0 CMS items for one of the plans. Like, I don't know, Wix, you have CMS like out of the box for a free site. So I don't know. Which I guess you have here too, but only 50. Anyway, what I really wanted to hop over to here is this custom code. And you'll notice here that the custom code section is add custom HTML and CSS. So we're not really talking about custom JavaScript. And even the custom JavaScript that we could possibly add is very limited. So I just found some pictures online of like what the custom code would look like if we can add it. So this is like the custom code panel. And basically you can insert kind of code on the page to the head tag and yeah, before the body tag. So very similar to what Wix would allow in terms of adding custom code through the dashboard, which is also something that Wix only allows for upgraded sites. But the difference is that Wix has the Velo API, which Webflow doesn't seem to have. So I took a peek just at the documentation also to try and understand this a little more. And I noticed that there are two APIs. So we have here this data API. If we take a look here, so there's the data API, which is the page I'm on now, and there's the designer API. And I was trying to figure out what the designer API is exactly, and the main thing I managed to understand is that this font is just horrendous. It's like it's like borderline insulting. Like I do not, I mean, maybe because it's like the designer API, they thought it would like be cool to use this completely unintelligible font on the page, which I have to say is just a humongous turnoff, like just huge turnoff for me personally. I mean, this is supposed to be professional documentation. This is not like supposed to be flaunting some kind of like design capability, and it just makes it really hard to read. But it seems to be an API for accessing various design elements of the Webflow website. Um, yeah, I didn't read much more into it because it doesn't really have to do with what I was looking for, which is more this data API. And this is the API which would allow you, access to different elements in the CMS, for example, or the e-commerce solution. And the only thing that I managed to discern here is that this is not really like the Velo API. This is more like the REST API in Wix, which allows you to access a Wix website from outside of Wix. And this doesn't really allow you to access Webflow from within Webflow, just like the Velo API would allow you from within Wix. And that's a huge downside. And I just kind of did a little more research just to make sure that my theory was correct. And I did see, like, for example, this is a very simple query that we would want to make with Velo code. Like, so how do I get the collection data from within Webflow? And the answers all are that it's not possible. And that you cannot essentially query the collections from within. So yeah, but the API cannot be accessed client-side due to CORS restrictions. Okay, so you can't access this API that I just showed you from within Webflow because you'll hit CORS restrictions. So you basically, to the best of my knowledge and this kind of research that I was doing here using the Webflow API on the front end, it does not seem like you have anything similar to Velo capabilities within Webflow. So any attempt to customize your website kind of using JavaScript and interacting with your CMS with third-party APIs, it's really completely not so possible. So that is obviously a huge win for Wix, and it's also, in the end of the day, why I still stick strong with Wix. Not married to Wix, if somebody can show me something that they think is better, like I'll take a look. But this is, even though like the design capabilities of Webflow, I will give them that point and say that they're superior to Wix's. This is a huge problem for somebody who's trying to build a custom web app or even just a website with just like a little more, you know? So that is definitely something that's missing here in Webflow. But I do want to explore some other aspects as well. One of them being the different business solutions that Webflow offers versus the business solutions that we get from Wix. Okay, so here I am back on my lovely, lovely site. And let's first take a look here at the e-commerce plugin that they have over here. That's the only one that kind of seems to be out of the box from Webflow. So if I click on that, let's turn your website into a store. Let's do this. And oh, wow. Okay, so I'm getting here a lot of stuff in terms of setting up my store. I get this here with no products initially, but I can create some sample products. So let's go ahead and do that. Categories, no items, orders, no items. That makes sense. Subscriptions, I guess that's product subscriptions. I'm just really curious to see how this kind of looks Yeah, okay, so we have our products added in, and let me close this, and let me see if that added any pages to my site. Okay, so I see we have a products template here, and interesting. So I'm given like pretty much a blank canvas for the products page, which is very different than Wix. So that is definitely interesting. Let me take a look and see what else we have here in terms of pages. So we have checkout. Okay, so checkout, very similar to Wix. We have pre-built checkout, but I do see here that we have design control. Let me see here. Like, let's see if I could change the padding here. So let me change this to like 20. Okay, that wasn't so indicative. Let me change this width to like pixels, change it to like 300 pixels. Yeah, so I have design control over the checkout page, which is interesting. I see buttons here for like Apple Pay and stuff. Billing, okay, all pretty standard. Items in the order. Yeah, pretty standard. Let's see what would happen if like I try to delete something. Like let me delete this submit button. Okay, so it doesn't seem to be letting me delete. Yeah, I can't remove this, I think. Oh, here, delete, let's see. No, I don't think I could delete things here from the page. So basically, I have design control, which is pretty nice. It's definitely something that's missing from the Wix checkout page. Order confirmation. Yeah, so it's super interesting that you get kind of like a blank canvas for the products. I'm pretty curious like how that might look. It's weird that they don't even suggest. Like I do like the freedom, but on the other hand, I feel like it would be pretty hard for a lot of people to design like a store page from scratch, but it could be because I went the blank canvas route. It could be that they do have some pre-made templates for store as well, and I just didn't choose those. So I don't want to just kind of discard that. But definitely an interesting difference here between Wix. I'm not going to take a deeper look into like the capabilities of the store because I think that's like a little bit outside the scope. I do get the overall impression that Wix might have a slightly more robust e-commerce capabilities than what I'm seeing here for Webflow. I just think it's a little more robust, basically based on intuition. I can't point to anything specific. Um, I just feel, yeah, like okay, variance. I guess that's pretty similar. Um, But one thing that I will note is that this seems to be the only out-of-the-box solution offered by Webflow. I do see this apps option over here, and then I can go ahead here and find some apps, and then I'm taken to kind of this third-party marketplace, very much like the Wix app marketplace. Um, and yeah, I mean there could here e-commerce and booking. Mm, payment and accounting. Let's see. Yeah, so I'm just seeing like a bunch of different like third-party apps, but there doesn't seem to be anything out of the box offered by Webflow. Whereas with Wix, out of the box you have for free. You have Wix stores, you have Wix bookings, you have chat, you have pricing plans, you have, I mean, blog there might be here as well. I'm not sure, but like forum. I mean, just it's crazy, and it's all out of the box. It's not perfect. There are a lot of things that can be improved, but there's also the whole option of customizing using the Velo APIs. So it's really quite incomparable. The options that you have. Then again, here you do have some third-party options, so it's possible that you can find a third party that does exactly what you need. Maybe it'll cost you a few extra bucks, but then again, it might be a better solution than the Wix solution because it's built by a third party that is dedicated completely to that specific solution. So pros and cons, but overall, just considering what you get out of the box with Wix, and with Wix you can also install other third-party apps. It's really, yeah, hands down, I think Wix takes Webflow on this one. So that is in terms of the Wix business solutions. And now let's just hop in and cover like a few more points that I wanted to explore and touch on with Webflow. So one topic that I know is a big concern to people when they're exploring different platforms for their website is the whole topic of SEO. Because even if you build a beautiful site, if nobody's going to find it, then you have a problem. So let's go and check and see what we have here in Webflow in terms of SEO and how that compares to Wix. So if I just take a look here at the home page, I'm just going to zoom in here and click on settings. And here within the settings, we have the SEO settings. And just at a first glance, it looks quite similar to what you'd have for page SEO on Wix. So we have title tag, meta description. We have the open graph settings, like for the different social platforms. I don't see anything here that kind of correlates to the advanced SEO settings that you'd have on a Wix page. So it's initially looking a little bit more like Wix has the upper hand here. And that's kind of confirmed if I go into the dashboard for my site and I take a look at what's under this kind of SEO tab, and not nearly as many tools as Wix provides. You know, Wix has partnership with Google, so you can like get indexed super fast. Um, and just a whole suite of tools. I'm not even going to go through it all because Wix really offers a ton in terms of SEO tools. But there are two things that we should consider here that do give Webflow points versus Wix. One is that it does seem like my free website can be indexed. So with Wix, you can't really get your free site indexed, but with Webflow, it does seem like the free site might be. It says here indexing is enabled, but it also says off here. Hmm. So I'm not so sure. Maybe that's not so true. I don't know. I should probably look a bit more into that before I declare. I just saw here it says enabled, but now I'm seeing it says here off. So I'm not so sure. I'm a little confused. So let's discard that point, and let me talk about the second point, which is site speed. And this is something which I've seen Wix just completely and continuously ignore, um, and gaslight themselves as well. It's just a huge problem. I mean, anybody who's opened up a Wix website with more than a few pages on a mobile phone, the problem is glaring. No statistic or measurement or anything will convince me or anybody who's used a Wix website otherwise. And we all know that user experience is important for SEO as well. So beyond like all these fancy settings and SEO setup wizard, the actual experience on your site counts for a lot. And I think that based on what I'm seeing here in Webflow so far, Webflow will take the cap in terms of experience on the site itself, the load speed, and that's a big factor. And I think that unless Wix addresses that soon, it platforms like Webflow have the chance of gaining the upper hand for certain types of websites. So I definitely think that there's even though they don't have as much as Wix, and it makes sense because Webflow's been around for a few years and Wix has been around for many few years. But yeah, that's just one thing to consider in terms of SEO. But in terms of like take a step back and not talk about site performance, which is a slightly different category, but like just SEO offering, obviously Wix is a lot more robust than Webflow. So that's in terms of SEO. And now let's just take a peek at a few more things, a few final things that I just want to point out that are quite unique to Webflow from what I can see, and may tip the scale depending on what your considerations are for your website. Two more things that I wanted to cover before we wrap up. One of them is this logic panel that I found over here. And when I go in, I have the option to edit these logic flows and create logic flows that will kind of create CMS item based on a certain trigger. So I can like add this trigger, incoming webhook or form submission. So it's a little bit like Wix automations. It doesn't seem nearly as robust, and I didn't really understand here how to do, like, it kind of ends with the whole world of the CMS. It doesn't really allow me to affect the design of the site, which I think could be pretty cool as like a no-code tool that still allows certain kinds of customization. So it seems like a little half-baked to me, but that's something worth pointing out because it's slightly unique in terms of like the control of the CMS based on certain trigger actions. And the last thing, which I think is one of the huge selling points of Webflow, is this right over here. And that is the ability to export code. And basically, this is a key difference between Wix and Webflow, and frankly, Webflow and a lot of other platforms, is that you can essentially grab your entire website in HTML, CSS, JavaScript, albeit the JavaScript was like not very intelligible JavaScript. Like this is like compiled JavaScript. So I'm not really sure, how this is supposed to help me as a developer so much. Maybe if you upgrade the plan or something, then there's a way to see plain JavaScript. I don't know. But basically, the fact that you can export any element of your site is quite unique. And you can also see that the site structure itself is really just very intuitive HTML and CSS, as opposed to Wix, which is really this like jumbled, complex HTML and like it's really unintelligible in terms of the DOM, whereas this is really just like a very clean, intelligible DOM. Which I think is a plus. Like, I think that it's a good direction. Maybe it's not 100% there yet, but it's something that exists in Webflow and not in Wix. That definitely gives some additional points to Webflow. And with that, I think we're going to wrap up. I'm going to do like kind of an overall conclusion, just walking through the different points that we touched on. And obviously, there's a lot more to touch on in Webflow, like the whole area of like collaboration, adding to teams, managing things through the dashboard, letting clients edit, and stuff like that. I think these are all interesting aspects, and a lot of aspects that I really think that Wix observed in Webflow and possibly other platforms and started to integrate when they created Studio. So Studio is a lot of taking the Wix world and like importing some stuff here that we've seen in Webflow to make it kind of on par. Okay, so we've been playing around for what feels like about an hour, and I have this new beautiful website that I can show off, and I'm ready to kind of sum this up and say who I think, it's very superficial, but who is the winner in different points that I've noted to myself that I wanted to kind of test each of the platforms on. So let's start off with ease of use. I think that in terms of ease of use, I think it's a tie. I think that um, using the tutorial that they gave me in the beginning for Webflow, it really helped me get a very good basic understanding of how things work. I found it super intuitive as somebody who comes from a developer background, whereas Wix, I think, also has a very intuitive start to it. And the fact that you can just drag something on and plop it and it stays where you want it to be, I think that's a huge plus for Wix and for their ease of use case. But I think even though they approach ease of use differently, I think that in terms of ease of use, it's equal. I think that we have a tie there in ease of use. Design capability, I'm going to give that one to Webflow. I think that the Webflow approach of intuitive, you know, CSS style design in terms of how classes are assigned and just the whole access to the full CSS tree in a rather intuitive way and slightly different than the Wix way. I think that that's a plus for Webflow, both in terms of the ease of design, capability of design, and the logic of the design. So I'm going to give that one to Webflow. In terms of performance, so how the website performs and how the editor performs, that one is also going to go to Webflow. The editor does not lag 1 second. It's true, my website's not huge, but it didn't even show signs of like starting to slow down, where Wix can like just be slow opening the editor sometimes and going into preview mode, going to the published site. I mean, I think Webflow takes the cake on performance. In terms of everything else, so in terms of custom code, Wix obviously is a huge winner on that one. I think Wix offers everything that Webflow has and just so much more. The ability to access, you know, the Velo APIs from within the website, and you have your own backend server, and it's huge what Wix does in terms of custom code, and it's just really completely takes the cake on that one, as well as the whole approach to data, CMS, just the way the CMS is set up, the data types, the certain access that you have, and the fact that they view a CMS really as a database and not necessarily as something that's just going to be populating dynamic pages. I think I appreciate the Wix approach on that one a lot more. Then again, we did have the lists within lists on Webflow, so that was like a small, the silver lining around the whole CMS and data approach. And I'm not even talking about the fact that we were locked out of many features due to the fact that they're behind a paywall in Webflow, whereas Wix, you have them out of the box for free, and you can really play around and experiment with everything. In terms of SEO, I think it's a tie in terms of like real SEO. Like Wix does have a better, SEO wizard. They do a partnership with Google. So you'll probably have an easier experience actually getting listed and getting your website up there in terms of SEO. But in terms of actual discoverability, setting up the basics, in terms of on-page SEO, and the big bonus that Webflow has in terms of site performance, I think that I'd give Wix a slight upper hand on that because they really have put a lot of effort into SEO. But in yeah, in terms of like the real deal, it's almost a tie, I would say, in terms of what can be done for SEO in each platform, and in terms of how likely your website is to be ranked high on each platform. I think it's pretty much the same because in the end of the day, SEO is really about creating quality content and not so much about all the fluff that goes around it. And let me just see if there's anything else that I wanted to touch on. The business solutions. So obviously, Wix is a huge winner here when it comes to the business solutions. The amount of apps that you get out of the box is just crazy, whereas what we had in Webflow was pretty much just the e-commerce. And it also didn't seem quite as robust as Wix, but it did seem a little more customizable in terms of design, so that kind of gives it a few points. But overall, I would say that Wix is the winner there. And lastly, in terms of lock-in, so obviously Wix, you're completely locked in, except for your data. Like you could technically, I guess, you could export your data from Wix, like your CMS. You could use Wix as a server to like pull your data to another website or another platform. But once you're in Wix, you're in Wix, like you're locked in. Whereas Webflow, it does seem like you have a way out. If you decide that Webflow is no longer for you, you'd probably have to do some work to get it up to par for wherever you're converting to. But if you decided to go indie and go, full stack HTML, CSS, JavaScript after Webflow, you would have that option. So that's something cool. And yeah, with that, it wraps it up. With that, I would like to wrap up. And obviously, I haven't touched every single thing in Webflow, and I'm sure there's more to discover here and more cool perks. But I think that this did give a pretty comprehensive comparison, and I hope that this will help you either make informed decisions or strengthen your belief in one of the platforms or the other. I'm super curious if you are watching this and you are somebody that has a lot of experience with Webflow, you're a Webflow expert, or you've used Wix and Webflow and you have thoughts about what I found here, and if you think I made a mistake of some sort, if I missed something, I'd love to hear your opinions in the comments below. And yeah, if you like this kind of walkthrough tutorial, please give it a thumbs up so I know maybe we could explore some other platforms together as well. And if you subscribe to the channel, I will see you next time.